Hello, Denise or Kiki. How you doing, girlfriend?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing awful.
I understand. And I know a
Doing
lot of people are.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
I do have moments of awful, but I'm letting myself have them and relating them to other things that it reminds me of and trying to do things to not to make it go away. I let it come, but then I go do things to make myself feel better. Like right now, my big project is making the sidewalks ready for snow shoveling because I don't like to have grass and leaves in my snow when I shovel it. I hate that.
true.
I want it to be clean and white. So I've been cleaning all the cracks in my sidewalk and pulling out. And that has been really feeling good and covering up the gardens with hay and leaves and just doing stuff like that that makes me feel good.
Well, I think we're talking here about two different ways of dealing with trauma and re-traumatization. So let's welcome everybody. Hey,
Hi.
friends. I'm Holly Elissa Bruno, and I'm with Denise Rokicki, and we get together every Monday, East Coast, 3 o'clock if you're not in the United States, and could be anytime, anyplace else in the world, like 8 o'clock in London. We get together, and I've been doing so for quite a while now, to share what it's like to be trauma survivors who want to live our most fulfilling lives. And we are both American. In fact, we're both North American. And we have, in this country of America, been through an election. The last time Denise and I were together, we were different then too. Denise was like looking forward to pledge of not the pledges of allegiance, but the taking of office by first woman president. That's not happening.
It didn't
And
happen.
it didn't happen. And I had that image too. I carried that image. I thought that was great. So what we're doing today, my friends, is we're here we are, trauma survivors. The title of this program is Trauma Survivors Walking Each Other Home. And how on earth can we walk each other home on this difficult time? And Denise, I hear what you're saying. You're saying there are things I can do in my life that make my life good, right? So, like when the snow comes and you're shoveling, you don't pick up dirt, you don't pick up dandelions, you pick up snow. I got you.
Yes.
I got you. I did a similar thing today, sweetie. I've had all kinds of challenges with my internet and cable stuff. It was a very simple thing, but you know how this goes. I had a very simple thing going on. I said, I don't need a landline anymore. I'm going to get rid of the landline. So I just have my cell phone. And I thought I'd be saving money. And as a result of that, the organization that I used turned off my internet and turned off my cable. And so I wasn't getting anything.
Oof.
And the organization that I'm using has a really ineffective customer service. So it's been weeks and I've tried all kinds of things, including going directly into the store and getting new equipment and getting help installing new equipment, but none of that really worked fully. So today I finally got through a person and I was able to schedule a tech person coming today. And he came and bravo, I've got everything working again.
Yay.
And yes, and I said to him, look, I'm not tech oriented, but I can tell you from what's going on. He said, oh, you're doing great. I get it. The man came in and we didn't talk about politics at all. But the good thing is, he came in and he restored my service. So now there are all kinds of things I couldn't do before that I can do now. And that's just a little step, but it took 4 hours the day before with
Right.
the as alleged service department. It took not being shaken and upset when two people hung up on me. And then there was no reason to hang up except that their job obviously wasn't to remedy the situation, it was to sell me a new product. And I said politely, and I didn't need to be more polite. I just said, the answer's no. Let's move on. Thanks, but no thanks. And they kept trying to sell me something. Maybe they got a commission or something. Maybe they would have. Anyway, I stuck with that. And I've stuck with this whole thing. And it's not been pretty and it's been really frustrating. And here's the thing about trauma surviving. When I'm up against an immovable object, which I don't have much of any power over, like a technical, like an internet company or something, and I try all of my skills and nothing really works, that's when I can go into that crevice, or the crevice opens up to me, which says, girl, it's not even a logical thing. It just says, this kind of thing doesn't get better. This kind of thing doesn't get better. So what have I got to do? I've got to deal with it as it is. And that can take me down, because I have, as a trauma survivor, this desire to live my most meaningful life. And again, guess what, Denise? I guess we get to have a meaningful life, just not in the way we thought it was going to be.
Right. It's going to be
So
different.
It's going to be different. So talk with me about that. So you're doing things to take care of yourself. How are you dealing with being a trauma survivor, given we have been quite fully re-traumatized in this country?
I have been getting together with friends that, have similar political views. Like one couple that I hang around with, we went and collected driftwood at a park near the bay. And then we're going to go again this week because one of the women got a huge idea about building a sculpture in the back. So, and I know some people that also, I went to a coffee club group, and some people are traumatized more than others. And so I honor that in them. And, I empathize and I have compassion. And I also tell, what I've been doing to help myself. And maybe they can try that too.
So we're taking different approaches here, and they're both very legitimate and very typical of trauma survivors. You are taking on tasks that you can do that will help. And I am feeling my feelings, talking about my feelings, talking with other people who are equally trauma survivors and equally down, and slowly allowing myself to settle into this new reality.
Right.
And it's a harsh reality to settle into.
It did really take a few days. And something that was also helpful was hearing other people.
Mhm.
There's I'm sorry to say, a man on Facebook,
Okay.
because I prefer to, be more womanly inclined. But there's a man that told the feeling so succinctly, and beautifully, and really went into, the way we were raised was to love other people and to help other people. And now more than half of the people don't honor that. It's really sad and very, very disappointing that so many people do not have that in their, they just want to have, I guess, maintain their privilege of white nationalism or white supremacy, I guess, is the thing that hits me the most about this, is the racism.
Yeah. So I had a strange encounter with that, as I was in California last week speaking at a national conference, and I went to bed not knowing what the election was going to be on Tuesday night. But I heard a broadcaster say, We don't have the results, but yeah, thanks. What Denise and I do when things start getting stressful and I can feel it in my body. We both have sustenance, which is water beside us. And Denise can tell you about the warm
Warm
line.
line.
Yeah, for trauma
There's a
survivors.
warm line that you can get on your Facebook or on your Google, actually. On your Google, you can say warm line and get one-on-one support from an understanding human being.
Yeah. And those people are understanding because they're also trauma survivors. They're not about judging us. It's kind of like us. We're here to like just be open to whatever we can learn and however we can help each other. So what I'm going to do is share images, because when my brain doesn't put things together in a way that I'm able to say I've come to a conclusion, because it's a harsh conclusion that I would be coming to, I just can describe images which give me hints about how I am. And I think my brain might have shaped itself that way post-trauma. And this is a post-traumatic week. Okay. It's very traumatic. And so let me tell you some images. So I went to bed the night of the election and I didn't have a good feeling. But I didn't have a good feeling last week. I wanted to be hopeful, but I just didn't have a good feeling. And I woke up in the morning and I had an 8 to 10:30 presentation. And the presentation was on being actors, not reactors, when it comes to trauma. We know trauma is going to happen. We know trauma can re-trigger us because we're survivors. How can we get ahead of that? And for a while, I was thinking of the image. How do we get ahead of the pain? Like I just sprained my knee and it was really hurting badly. And I don't like to take, well, I do and I have to, but I don't like to take medication unless I have to. So how did I get ahead of the pain? Well, I exercised to the extent that it was safe. And I rubbed my knee because the lymphatic system has to get flushed again. And so I felt like this presentation I was making with another person who was born in Colombia, is Spanish speaking, focuses more on being with little children. I focus more on being with adults, but we had this whole plan to talk about seeking glimmers of hope rather than being taken down by triggers of fear. And we were just really honest. And so I saw the news and I saw the face of the person who's going to be the face of America. And it was really hard, really, really hard, because I have memories of hearing "grab him by the pussy." I have memories of,
So vulgar. I mean, in every chance he gets, he just became more vulgar at the end of the. Oh, that is very
was
triggering.
Liz Cheney. Liz Cheney had to face the firing squad and the guns in her face.
So vulgar
It's vulgar, and it's vulgar is
and
for me.
violent.
Yeah, it's a hint. All of this stuff is code for violence. That's the challenge. Everything I'm hearing is like a code for violence might happen any minute. And as a survivor of violence and incest, this is hard and this is hard. So how the hell can I live? Well, I decided to take it a minute at a time. So there I was, presenting to this group of educators. It's the National Association for the Education of Young Children. And honey, the room was crammed. There was not even standing room only, and people were like all sitting around. And we had this planned. We had this plan to be really interactive so people could talk about what's their go-to response when they're dealing with a child with trauma or they're dealing with themselves with trauma. What's their go-to response? And then we read a book called Rabbit Listened, which book I recommend, because Rabbit had a friend who was hurting, and all the other animals went up to the friend, and like the snake went up and tried to distract in a negative way, like all into all this other stuff, and the animal that was upset wasn't having any. And then the elephant came in and tried to be really wise and tell the person what to do. And that wasn't what the hurting person needed. And then came in the caregiver. I'll just take care of you. I'll take your pain away. And that wasn't it. And the thing most that this hurting, traumatized animal needed was Rabbit, because all Rabbit did really was listen. And there it is, the being with. How do you
Right.
feel about that, Denise, as a trauma?
Yes, that proved very helpful yesterday. I drove to Bowling Green to have coffee with a group that I am associated with, and we each listened to each other fully, and actually, finally, in the end, came up with some ideas. For example, I know that you participated in consciousness raising groups
Yep, I
back in the
did.
day. Right. Well, we're going to try to start something like that within our larger social group. We're going to try to make some little, smaller consciousness raising groups. So that was
And tell
really
me,
helpful.
love it. Tell me what that would look like, or what would be what do you mean by, I know what I mean by consciousness raising. What do you mean?
Well, the first thing I thought about was, the consciousness raising group that I was aware of when I was a child is when these groups were happening, was that people took a mirror and examined themselves so they could see what their body was really like because it was so secret. That was one, but we didn't come up with any topics yet. But that was the first thing that I thought of. I go, when she said, let's do some consciousness raising groups, I said, I got a mirror.
I know what you're talking about because I did that. That was
Mm,
1973, 74, and a book called Our Bodies, Ourselves came out.
right,
And up until that point, we did not have that information gathered together. So that was a book by women for women. And yes, it encouraged us to look at our own bodily parts that we couldn't look at before and to help each other out with that. And we did that. We did that. That was really, really helpful. So, oh my gosh, yes. What I hear about this and what I remember was it was women helping women because we were in the minority in terms of power. And we are again.
we are.
We are again. And so, how can we help each other through this? And I had men in the group when I was presenting. When I say presenting, I mean like facilitating interactions because I don't preach. I really invite people to find where they are in this thing. So the first thing we did was really powerful, Denise. We invited people to look at what is our usual response to trauma. And we looked at all those different animals. And then we invited people to get together and share with another person what. So if your usual response is to be a problem solver, and that might not always work. What's
Right,
another response that you can consider? So my response is more often now to just listen. So I am the rabbit listening. But I also can be the one who says, I'm going to take action. I'm going to be the underground taking action. I'm going to do what I have to do. So that was one of the things we did. And that was just very helpful. And I don't need to go into the other things we did, but what I wanted to say is this: there was nothing more healing for me than to be presenting, facilitating on facing trauma in the midst of facing trauma. And I went in at the beginning of the session and I said, how can I welcome people given the results are just out? Some people were happy, some people were crying, some people, I walked by a woman who was in a freeze thing. I said, sweetie, how you doing? She said, my daughter is trans. That's how I'm doing. I just stood with her for a while. Anyway, I walked in and I said, wherever you are, it's okay. You can be here. And we're going to set this up as a safe place. We're going to talk about ground rules. And I invited people when they go in their classrooms, just like you, Denise, they go in their classrooms. What do they do to help a child feel safe, especially a traumatized child? And we did the thing about people talked about other things they do for children to be safe. And then we talked about why that doesn't work for adults. And we said, what are you talking about? It does work for adults. So together we created ground rules for our time together so we could be safe. And we decided to go judgment free. Unless somebody was harming somebody else, it was okay for people to be wherever they were, unless
Right.
they were harming somebody else. And so, that meant people could cry, that meant people could be angry. So we co-created a space and
Dissociate. Some people have gone through, I mean, I did too, right? At first,
mhm,
Tuesday, I dissociated and took a lot of naps that day and just
yes.
woke up, brushed my teeth, woke up, got some food, woke up, just really let myself be blank, kind of.
One of the things I said to myself that I haven't done for myself yet, and part of that is being technologically not so skilled, is that I promised myself I would sit and watch Kamala's concession.
It was so powerful. You haven't
Yeah.
seen it yet?
I've only seen snippets of it.
Yeah, it's good. It's
What
you
was
can
post?
tell that she has worked with people that have been in trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Her line of work puts her in contact with trauma people, and she just knew how to. She was so presidential,
Yes.
basically, and she knew how to put us not at defeat, but at what we're going to do now, what we're going to do next.
And what was that?
Stay organized, maintain our connections,
Mm.
um, not be wrong just because we lost. We're not
Mm-hmm.
wrong for what we long for all people.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's really good to hear. And a friend of mine who's male told me about it. He's just very shaken, and he said what he remembered was Kamala and Doug arm in arm walking off together.
That was beautiful too.
Yeah, I because one of the promises of those two people, Tim and Kamala, was that we would have open flexibility, ways for masculinity to take shape differently.
Right. Oh, that
And
was so cool.
I was so hopeful. And I probably will never forget the face of Gus Walls, so able to let his tears spurt out of his eyes. That's my father up there.
Right.
That just was so moving to me. And then the next minute he was being labeled as having all kinds of being otherwise, otherwise able. And I thought, wait, to me, this guy's what I want to be, and there were other people
Right.
saying,
He's emotionally intelligent for sure.
eat, let him be. And the whole convention was an opportunity for men to look at themselves differently. Here's
Mhm.
Doug. I'm here to support her. Mm-hmm. Not only that, I'm going to quit my job, my well paid job as an attorney, because I want to devote myself to backing her up in any way that I can. And I don't want there to be any conflict of interest, is a simple way to state it. It's like to honor the Constitution,
Right. To be ethical.
be ethical. Jimmy Carter, what did he do? He had a peanut farm. He gave up his peanut farm. You know, I have a friend who's gay in Delaware, and he wrote, and he's beginning to do things again too. But he couldn't go to the mall because he said he was at the mall and there were all of these Trump supporters in a rage thing, just celebrating in a rage, and he couldn't go in. And now I want to share with you what I experienced, which I think is going to be part of what we experience. It's what I experienced before in my life as a child, as a woman in my 20s, as a woman in my 30s. It's never gone away, but it's gotten better. And that is what some people call man's inhumanity to man, or man's inhumanity to woman. And there is something called the civility movement for people just to be civil to each other. And civil means we don't hurt each other consciously. I fear that social contract we've had, that we won't hurt each other intentionally, that we'll live and let live, that's gone, that's going. And let me tell you what happened. I'm flying back from California. I get across the country. When people are asking me how I'm doing, if they're really asking me how I'm doing, I'm saying, oh, my soul is good, but my spirit is sad. I am really, really grieving for Kamala, for the election. And, people have all kinds of responses. One person said, happens every 4 years, got to deal with it. I said, yes, I hope it happens every 4 years.
Right.
I hope it happens but what I'm ready for is people can say whatever they want to say. I'm just saying, this is how I feel. And for me, it helps me to say how I feel. This is one of the things I've learned as a trauma survivor. Number one, I have feelings. Number two, I have a right to feelings. Number three, I can name the feelings. Number four, I can feel the feelings and I can say them out loud. So, that's the way I was talking with people. Some people were like, I have a friend that was really thrilled about the election and she looked so happy. And I said, you and I know how different we are from each other, but I'm happy to see you happy. It just is, I'm happy to see you happy. And I
Right.
was. Her son had just gotten married and she'd gotten all prettified and lost all kinds. So she was very, very happy, and I was happy for her. So I'm open to all kinds of things. And I'm getting on my last flight, and I got upgraded to. It was a small plane, like a little tube, but I got upgraded to first class, not because I'm rich, not because I pay for first class, but because I travel all the time, and so I'm a frequent flyer. So there were a lot of people in wheelchairs getting on this little plane. And I'm first in line because I'm in the front row, which is what I prefer for a spraying knee. I can put my knee out. And I was standing next to the guy who takes the luggage. And I usually talk with people if if I'm standing within proximity. So I said, hey, how you doing? And he just kind of waved and he had his headphones on. And I said to him, so how are you doing given the election, if you want to say? And he looked at me like he didn't understand what I was saying. I said, it's okay. It's okay. Then I just went in. Whatever was going on with him was okay. It's okay with me. He was Black. This was Charlotte, North Carolina, where my first teaching job ever was to teach in an all Black high school. I have feelings in Charlotte, North Carolina, about my history there. And anyway, so I went in the plane and the flight attendant came up to me. She said, how are you doing? And I said, I'm really sad. I'm really sad. Thanks for asking. Yeah, I said I was really hopeful about people's rights, and now I'm concerned about people's rights. And the guy next to me said, "Oh yeah, a lot of rights, a lot of rights." I don't know what he was saying, but he had a lot of energy. So I said, "Wherever you are is okay with me." To the woman. Then this man turned to me, and I felt like I felt with my father, like I felt with other people who split off from themselves when they are taken over by rage. Back in the 19th century, they used to call this possessed. When people are possessed by demons. Well, this guy had this like burgeoning, explosive, and he's seated right next to me on the airplane. And he's yelling at me, and everybody's there to hear him. You are racist. What? Is he talking to me? you know, you were racist. That was the most racist thing you could say. I said, what? What are you talking about? He said, the way you talk with that guy out there. I didn't understand. I said, I don't understand. Well, it's because you're so racist. So what happened was he did this thing, which I haven't felt for a long time, Denise. He simply was a flamethrower. He flew the flame at me. He made it loud so everybody could hear. I'm being called a racist. I'm not going to defend myself in front of I'm not going to get into it with him there. I just said, what's going on? I don't understand. You're a racist. And I said, and he couldn't explain what he was, why, what I had said to this guy was racist. I was asking him how he felt, you know? And if he didn't want to talk about it, that was fine with me. That was fine. But we were standing right next to each other. And the wheelchairs were going by. When I'm in proximate to somebody, I like to say, hi, I'm here. Hi, you're there. If you want to connect, great. No, no. Anyway, his rage was so strong. And it was like felt my father's rage too. So a man out of control. His rage was so strong. It was like to throw fireballs right into my body and throw all of this rage. I mean, he was just so enraged. And there was nothing I could do because I couldn't understand what he was enraged about. But here's what happened. And makes this, I feel sad about this. My first go-to, this is like what we were talking about in the session I facilitated. What's your go-to when you, not when you see someone who's being traumatized, but when I myself was traumatized, my go-to was, I must have screwed up.
Right.
I must have messed up. My genetics are black. Yes. But I was raised as a white person and I had white privilege. I still look like I've got it. So I'm starting to beat myself up saying, what did I do? And the next thing that happened was my brain shut down. Here it is, the trauma response. 90 to 95% of my prefrontal cortex shut down and I couldn't think straight. And I started trying to solve the problem. What did I say with this mechanic guy? What did I say to him that was so offensive? And I couldn't think straight. I couldn't think my way back there. I kept trying to do it. And when my brain gets into a repetitive cycle, I said, sweetheart, it's time to be gentle. And then I realized I'm scared. This raging guy is sitting next to me and he's ready to punch me out. And I can feel that rage. And I looked at the seats of the people when I stood up to put something in the stove place. I saw the people behind me looking at me like, what's wrong with you? You're the racist, but they didn't see me yelling. But anyway, it was uncomfortable as hell. So what did I do? I said, okay, sweetheart, you're not safe. I didn't feel safe. How can I feel safe within close proximity? Especially when we know that within 5 feet of somebody, we can hear how he feels. We can feel that pressure. So I did something which is called tapping. It's the emotional freedom technique. I don't use it unless I'm really in bad shape. I was in bad shape. So I started tapping. I have unconditional love and acceptance of myself, despite being terrified in this moment. I have unconditional love and acceptance of myself, despite perhaps having done something racist. I have unconditional love and acceptance of myself, despite not being able to understand what's going on. I have unconditional love and respect for myself, despite the fact that this guy looks like he could punch me out in a heartbeat. And I'm 78 and I'm tired. And as I felt my body calming down, I also did the breathing. I didn't quite do that, but I did the breathing and I counted my breaths. And then I prayed. Now, I'm not a religious person, but I am a spiritual person. And I prayed. I prayed for him. I prayed for his well-being, for his calming, for whatever he needed to help him get right inside himself. I prayed for me. I prayed for the people on the plane. I prayed for the guy that I talked with. And it was a dance because we were together for 2 hours. And when the flight attendant came up to offer me, like, what did I want to drink? I befriended the flight attendant because that's what I do. I find out what their names are. So if I need something, I can say, her name was Moira. I said, hey, Moira, so here's what I'd like. Thanks. And then when she brought the drinks, there's a little space between us. So I made sure to take my tray table out so I could put my drinks on my table. And if he needed that whole space, he could have it. Then I said to myself, wait a minute, girl, you have a right. Of course, he's not going to respect a right.
Right.
So I said, just choose your battle, hon. Choose your battle. And then I went online and my brain was working really, really slowly. But when the flight was over, I said goodbye to Moira. I waited to pick up my luggage, and he came out of the plane after I did. And he was a ball of rage. He was just a ball of so angry, so enraged. And so that was Friday night. And I have been working with myself since then, talking about it. And the thing I'm sad about, Denise, is that I immediately went to the way that a survivor blames herself.
Right. What did I do?
What did I do? And this guy's gonna hurt me because he wanted to hurt me. He hurt me with his words, but he wanted to hurt me worse. I could see. He was like, when I tried to talk to him, he said, I don't want to hear anything, I don't want to hear anything from you. Who has the right to say that to somebody else? Who has the
Right.
judge somebody like that, say it so publicly and loud. And then as I've tried to connect to see what was going on, I don't want to hear a word from you, you know? So I watched him go off as a ball of anger. I took myself home and I decided to be very gentle, very, very gentle. I've talked about this with trauma survivors, and I feel now two things. One, I feel okay about myself. I had my whole life, including in utero, being terrified by a man and being in the uterus of a woman who had a lot of cortisol and mental health challenges. And so it's natural that I would have gone back to, my God, what did I do wrong?
Mhm.
And
Especially in our culture, Holly Elissa, it's the woman who has to st step back. In patriarchal culture, the power is with the guy.
and as a white woman, I remember teaching in an all-black high school when some of those powerful books were coming out. I was reading them. It wasn't just Malcolm X. It was there was one book about how white women were the problem. We were the enemy. And I had a student in my class. I remember him well. He started wearing sunglasses to class and he became a Panther, Black Panther. And he said, I used to like you, but now I know you're the enemy. You're the devil, the devil. And there I was, the devil. And I know that there are many reasons why white people, zillion thousand reasons why white people have done horrible things. But the fact that what I decided to do was to be gentle with myself. Um, and then I started asking for help. And when I talked about this at a survivors meeting, I could see by the way people were reacting, that it was his reaction was just over the top rage. And then this morning I talked with Rosa. I work with Rosa all the time, and she is Black. And she's from Detroit. And we talked about biz and we talked about how we're doing. And I said, Rosa, I need you to counsel me, honey. I said, sure. I told her what happened. Before I even got it out of my mouth, she said, that's happening more and more. And now this is the challenge. She said, that's happening more and more. People with hair trigger rage feel like they can be out on the street with their hair trigger rage and they can take it out on whoever they want to. She said, that was no more about you. You didn't do anything that was racist, had nada to do with you. He just needed a vulnerable place where he could take out his rage in public and scare the bejesus out of everybody and threaten you and threaten you. And she said, I see this happening all the time. I've seen it happen all the time. I've seen it happen all the time. And then I coupled that with what I read from my friend Peter, who's gay in Delaware, and him saying he couldn't go to the mall because there was this rage fest going on. And realizing that in my own neighborhood, when I first moved in here, I just reached out to everybody, was friendly to everybody. Like we don't have to be the same. And that has gone. Now neighbors are talking about neighbors. Neighbors are in little groups. I don't any longer feel like there's a hood here. It's okay because I have my own hoods. It's okay because I have my own chosen family. But Denise, what I guess I want to do with this is say, what can we do if this is true? And it feels true that what I experienced on that plane is going to be more and more of what's acceptable, because being uncivil, being abusive, being particularly abusive to women is so acceptable. And I experienced this as a child, and it was terrifying unto death. I experienced it in my 20s when I was a young, very attractive, woman in what had been a men's university. University of North Carolina was a men's college. The year I went there, it started having women. And when I was going to lunch at the restaurant, I mean, they call it a refractory or something. The men lined up, couldn't get in to get lunch unless I went through the line of men, and they would check me out, my body out fully, and rate me. I was too thin, they said, not enough boobs, they said. That happened in 1968. And you know what I did at the time? I was enraged. I set up a group of women. I set up a group of women just so that they could feel what it was like. And we looked at their packages and we looked at their hair. We did all this stuff. I mean, I didn't need to do it for long to stop feeling the anger and the rage. But that's something I wouldn't do again. I do not have to emulate the abuser.
Right.
But you know what? That did give those guys, whoever went through that line, it did give them an experience of what it was like to have to go through the gauntlet.
Right. Which men, some men are becoming more aware. Interestingly, I do this Black Lives Matter
Yes.
demonstration on Mondays and Wednesdays from 12:15 to 12:30 each week. And I
Mm-hmm.
stand with the Black Lives Matter peace sign, basically,
Yep.
in Sylvania, and which is a little bit uppity neighborhood.
Okay. And you're with nuns? They just
Yeah,
dress like
although
regular?
both of the nuns were not there, have not been there lately. One hurt her
Oh,
foot and she's going to come back soon, and the other
okay.
one was traveling and whatnot. So it's just been
Okay.
my housemate and I, Gina and I.
Okay.
And last week, for a few weeks, we get fingers from people drive by Trumpers and give us the finger, and it got a little extra ragey. One guy even blew his diesel motor, out his exhaust pipe at us
Yeah.
a few times. But in the last week, we had so many more people that were appreciative and smiling and waving and tooting at us, and
Good.
which made me feel like maybe we were going to win, in Ohio. And today, when I was out there, the people that care, that are happy that we're there, and that now recognize that we've done it for so long, they know what they're coming, and they're still being uh, expressing their fondness to us. And the people that were flipping us off before are not so enraged. They're more like they're going like this instead of
Oh,
like this, or they're
okay.
going like that instead of, you know, that finger, or rolling their window down and saying all lives matter or whatever they do. They're just, to me, I felt that they were less aggressive today.
That's great.
Yeah,
It feels really good.
it
And
did.
you know what we're talking about here is psychologists talk a lot about projection. How much am I projecting what my own life experiences is on everybody else? But that's what this program is about. My own life experience can shape a lot of who I am today. And some of that's okay. Much of it isn't. Much of it isn't. So I'm choosing to step back. This program, trauma survivors walking each other home, how can we help each other? And so if I had white male privilege, I wouldn't be asking questions. Or maybe I would. I do know plenty of white males who are like Doug Emhoff, who's got to be, I'd love to hear him now. How on earth is he doing?
He
How
looked brokenhearted at that Kamala's concession speech. He really looked brokenhearted. Like he really believed that
in
good
her?
was going to prevail too, you know? But thank you, Tim Walz. I'm talking about Tim Walz, actually. He is the one that looked brokenhearted.
Oh, yeah. He believed
And,
too.
right. And it just lets me know that these good guys, the good guys that are here, they're still going to be gooding.
It's a great way to put it. There will be gooding. There
There
will be
will
good.
be gooding. And, you know, and that's what I say now to my friends that, you know, as I go out about my little business that I have, my gigs,
Mhm.
a lot of the women that I work with are Black. They own child cares here in Toledo, and that's who I'm working with. And that's what I've been saying. The good are still going to be gooding. We are still going to be gooding. And that has helped.
That really does help. I mean, I think you've said a number of things that we can do. And I think I'm being a number of things that we can be. You know, it's a
Right.
both a be and a do. And I expect I'm gonna learn through this how to have my feelings and process my feelings, and at the same time find safety within myself.
Right.
That was
I am
the
here. I am safe. I have been saying that to myself a lot. I am
Mhm.
here. I am safe. You know,
Boy, that's crucial. I mean,
and
and good
I
for
have
you for
been.
saying that, because it's I was there, but I didn't feel safe with this rager.
Right. How could you?
And I was there and I was exhausted. I mean, I'd gotten up at like, the usual fly across the country, get up at 5. No, I'm sorry, get
Which
up at
started
4.
on Tuesday. I mean, because
Right,
when you're out of your home and out of your routine of safety, that puts you in that vulnerable place.
right. And and at this conference, I ran into many people who were like, I won't say like-minded, I'll just say that they were supporting women's rights, supporting human rights. And
Right. I mean, people in the field of education
right.
are very much aware of the inequities of patriarchy. I mean, we can see it with our own eyes so vividly. And
So vividly, you're right. And LeVar, go ahead, sweetie.
we, love each other.
Mhm. We were comforting each other. My two friends who are married, and one of the women is she took her daughter to New York City because that was the promise that they had made, and there they were, woman of color, strong lesbian woman in New York City. What was that going to be like? And they went because they wanted to live their lives. And I'm supportive that they did. Other people just so torn. But here's something I noticed we did right away. We fell back into code talking. And I'm going to give you an example of that. The keynoter was perfect. LeVar Burton, Reading Rainbow.
Oh, right, right.
Reading Rainbow. And he came in and I watched how he was going to greet people because just as I went into this huge group, I I chose how to greet people. And and so he came in and he talked in code. He said, well, this is someday. You know, it's the code of someday, it could be either way.
Right.
Um, you know, we've got a lot to face now. I've got a lot to deal with. Well, yeah, it could either way. He was being wise. And there's another message, isn't it? That to speak code, to be a code talker, is one of the safety pathways.
Right.
And I had kind of gotten over that. I had, you know, for years I used to say to people, you know, wherever you are is okay with me, but it isn't anymore. It's not okay with me if you are going to put babies in cages.
Right.
It's not okay with me if you're going to put Rachel Maddow in a concentration camp. It's
Right.
not okay with me if you're going to storm a library because trans people are reading or people in drag are reading to children. It's not okay with me if you're going to shut down Head Start, which is what this whole thing says it's going to do. That's
Right.
not okay with me. So I'm no longer saying, you live your life, I live mine. No, I say, you live your life, I live mine. We can be different. That's what this country has been about, but not if you're going to hurt people or hurt yourself. I'm not going to stand by when those things happen. So I used to speak a code which was much more protective of myself. Now I didn't. I mean, I turned to that guy. I didn't turn away from him. I didn't try to coddle him. I turned to him and I said, I don't understand. What's going on? Which enraged him even more. I was supposed to share his reality. I guess that's the thing about being dominant, isn't it? We assume we share the same privilege.
Right.
Yeah. So, you know, from what you're saying, there was a moment of civility, and that's great. And from what I'm saying, there was a moment of awful incivility.
Right.
And we could have more of both. But the question for us with this program is how can we as trauma survivors be in the moment and do in the moment and prepare to be actors, not just reactors? And that's a tough one because I was reminded when I was with this guy that whether I'm 2, 42, or 82, I don't have the physical capacities that a lot of men have. When I went to law school, I make no mistake, as Joe Biden said all the time, make no mistake. I took a self-defense course. You and I have talked about it. I wanted to take back the night. I was really pissed if I wanted to go for a night run or I wanted to go just take a walk at night. I couldn't do it. It wasn't safe in the city. So I took a self-defense course and I learned, and it gave me a sense of power, equal power, not power over, but equal power. If someone were try to jump me, I had things I could do in places where I could get them to stop. I never quite felt comfortable if a guy pulled a knife on me. You know, there were some things, but other things no. Or if a guy pulled a gun on me, and I wasn't sure I could do. What we're talking about here is trauma survivors in now an unsafe country.
Yeah. What I was thinking is maybe they're satisfied that they won, and that could dissipate some of that aggressive anger. That's what I'm hoping for.
And that's possible, but I have rarely seen someone whose power needs to have power over somebody. And that's what this is, this thing, this disdain for women. It's power over.
I just remember the last time that he won, how aggressive the young men were driving with their pickup trucks and their flags and
Yep.
cutting you off and
Yep.
speeding around you. There was a lot more of that. Where this time I'm observing that like they're not talking that much about it. They're not gloating. They're not mentioning it. They're not behaving in that way on the streets, although there's a couple, but not like it was the last time.
Well, I think I need to move to Toledo.
You'd love it.
Actually, here I am. I'm back home in Massachusetts, and this is a state that, with a governor, what I've noticed is I watched governor after governor in highly democratic states that were pro women's rights, pro human rights, pro helping children, say, you come for my state, you come to me. You come after my state. Who's that guy? Pritzker or somebody in someplace in the Midwest. You come from my people. You come through me. And the woman who's the head of Massachusetts said, no, we're not going to stop. We're not going to stop. And so there's the question. And I'm looking at our time. We've got about 4 minutes left, I think. Yeah, how are we feeling 1 week into this? And what
I
can we
do
do?
still have moments and hours of numbness or just disbelief that how how could more than half of us choose that? But it's a wave. I feel it. I i know why I'm disappointed. I totally get that I can still be me and do what I do, and even though I'm disappointed, I didn't get what I want, but I can get other things that I want.
It's tough when getting what we want isn't just, I want a piece of candy.
Right.
What you want, what I want, what we worked our whole lives for, is to co-create a place on earth where people can be true to themselves
And safe
and safe.
and
And
plenty. There's plenty. But it's these rich guys, they never can get to plenty. I just
that's
want
why, yeah, no,
it
go
to
ahead.
be dispersed more reasonably. I guess I'm like Robin Hood in that way, but I want it to be fair.
And Jimmy
I don't
Carter
want
said,
all the young black men in jail because they
right,
had a joint.
or shot on the streets, and nothing to stop them now.
Right. Stole the
Nothing,
pack of cigarettes.
right?
Now he's dead.
Stole a loaf of bread. That's the old story. Had to feed his kids,
Right.
stole a loaf of bread.
I just
Yeah.
want it to be fair and just. And it, we know that that is not what the Republican agenda is. We know that they want all the rich people to stay with their privilege.
And they want women to not have power. And that means, in a very real, dreadful, death like way, there are women dying. There are women
Yes, there
dying.
are.
And there'll be babies.
Almost half the women are, well, at least almost half the women that vote, so that's like a quarter of the women, are still going to stand in their power, are going to still practice being strong women, are still going to do good.
Yep. And do the gooding. Yeah, I'm just seeking a way for myself. And as a trauma survivor, I'm giving myself permission to feel my way. And that's a rough path. And the other thing I want to say is my first reaction was, it's not true. That was, I mean, how many times have we heard the election was rigged?
Right.
But it felt to me like this can't be true. There was such a groundswell of people who were there standing in line again to vote. There was such support for Kamala. There was such energy for that agenda. There was like finally
Such unity.
people were finally saying, I don't have to be down again. I don't have to be mean again, mean spirited. I can be up. I can be optimistic. And I thought that's where America was going.
Me
And
too.
so I really, part of me still believes that that wasn't the vote. I mean, call it denial, call it whatever, dissociation. But you know what? When this man is calling a dictator in Russia who has no problem killing people off, you know, and they're calling all these times a week. And there's all this sophisticated electronic infiltration. How do we know it was? How do we know it wasn't?
Right.
We don't. I mean, when Trump said before the election, you don't have to vote again, just vote this one time. You don't have to vote again. Anyway, girl, it's about trust too. When the world is not safe, I don't trust it. And so as a trauma survivor, I'm going to conclude with this. I need to go inside myself to find the safety no matter what. And I've had a challenging experience with that, but that's where I'm going to go. And I'm going to go to be with fellow travelers like you and other trauma survivors, wherever we can support each other, wherever we can take a stand, wherever we can do gooding, even if it means punishment. And see, there's the thing for me. My upbringing as a trauma survivor is so punitive. The idea of that happening is awful. And yet it's happening. Trump was interviewed. Yeah, women need to be punished for having abortions. Yeah,
Right.
it's happening. Sweetie, what's your closing thing you'd like to say to our trauma
My
survivors?
closing thing is we got this. We're going to keep learning and growing and find other ways to create safety in our families, our chosen families, because my family is not going to be safe this Thanksgiving nor Christmas.
That's right.
But I'm going to stay in my own safety.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And so my heartfelt desire is that everybody find a way to be true to ourselves and to be true to why we're here on earth. And that means still making a difference. And the consequences can be harsher. They can return to being harsh. They can be life threatening. They can be life threatening. I mean, when I watch MSNBC tonight and I see Rachel Maddow, am I going to see her behind bars?
Right.
Am I going to see Lawrence O'Donnell, who's devoted his life to telling the news in a way that helps us see things anew? These guys are going to be put in jail. And what's the pushback going to be? Am I going to tolerate that? Are you going to tolerate that?
I don't think so. I mean, when Donald Trump was elected before, I put on my pink pussy hat and I went to Washington, D.C. and marched with a million other women, and it was beautiful. And I hope that we can organize in that
We
way
will.
if these outrageous things happen.
We will. I'm getting my hat out. Pussy hat. Don't touch it. Okay, friends who are listening, wherever you are in this world, America, not America, we're facing this issue worldwide. It's whether or not people can be free. And that's a problem. That's what part of why trauma survivors are traumatized, because we just wanted to be free. We just want to be free, and we want to create a space where others can be free. So, my friend, let's smell the flower, blow out the candle, and make a wish for these United States of America, for the women here, for the people that are not dominant in power here. that we can have liberty, mercy, and justice for all.
For all.
God bless you.
God bless.